The world is stunned. India just struck Pakistan with missiles in a massive retaliation that has caused tensions to skyrocket between two countries that have historically been enemies for decades. And here's the kicker: India just struck a nuclear power. Worse yet, it's a nuclear power itself. The world needs to pay attention because Pakistan is outraged, and we may be seeing the beginning of a war between two massive military powers in South Asia. On May 6th, NPR was among the first outlets to report on India launching a large-scale missile attack against Pakistan. It says that India struck several regions in both Pakistan and Pakistani-controlled Kashmir and Jammu in what represents a dramatic escalation of the tensions that have always existed between the two nuclear-armed nations. India even has a name for the assault: Operation Sindoor. India's military says that Operation Sindoor targeted 9 sites across Pakistan, Jammu and Kashmir, with all 9 supposedly being linked to terrorist cells that have carried out attacks in India. India followed up the strike by publishing a 5-point statement to X. It claimed that the strike was in response to a terrorist attack carried out in Jammu and Kashmir a little over a week earlier, which we'll get into soon. India had to strike, the statement claims, because it was expected that Pakistan would take action against terrorists and the infrastructure that supports them. Instead, during the fortnight that has gone by, Pakistan has indulged in denial and made allegations of false flag operations against India. In other words, Pakistan didn't do anything about a major problem for India. So India decided to take matters into its own hands. The statement is also clear that India's strikes were meticulously planned and hadn't devolved into the country simply randomly attacking parts of Pakistan. India's actions have been focused and precise, claims the X statement. They were measured, responsible, and designed to be non-escalatory in nature. India points out that it only targeted known terrorist camps, with the mention of the strikes being non-escalatory serving as much as a warning as it is a statement of intent related to the missile strikes. India is telling Pakistan that it shouldn't respond. Whether it'll get its way is yet to be seen. India also claims to have had direct contact with the United States, particularly Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in the wake of its attacks. We don't know much about what that conversation entailed or what the US thinks about the missile attack yet. The US is keeping quiet, likely because it doesn't want to rush into another global military issue when it's already embroiled in the Ukraine and Yemen situations. Pakistan, for its part, seems to be disputing India's claims that the missile strike didn't have any impact on civilians. The Pakistani military's inter-service public relations team has already shared early statistics, claiming that 8 people were killed in the Indian missile strike, one of whom was a 16-year-old girl. Another 35 were wounded, per the Pakistan media outlet Geo. Al Jazeera provides more details about the strikes. It says that the majority of the targeted regions are in Pakistani's eastern Punjab province, with other strikes hitting Kashmir and Jammu. Specifically, the cities of Kotli and Muzaffarabad were key targets. According to one Pakistani military spokesperson, 5 specific locations were targeted across these regions. The spokesperson didn't elaborate from there, beyond claiming that India's missiles devastated a pair of mosques. It gets worse. Pakistan isn't taking any of this lying down. Despite the Indian military's claims that its attacks were designed to be non-escalatory, we're already starting to see some hints of escalation. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif says, "Heavy shelling has now resumed on the line of control that separates Pakistan-administered Kashmir from Indian-administered Kashmir. That line is essentially a border formed in 1949 as part of the Karachi Agreement that ended earlier fighting between India and Pakistan. Though initially created to spur negotiations between the two nations, it has since evolved into a fortified region, with both India and Pakistan refusing to give up any ground. For instance, India fenced its side of the line of control during the 2000s to prevent cross-border terrorist attacks in the regions of Kashmir and overseas. It appears such fortifications haven't worked. Beyond limited shelling across the line of control, Pakistan also claims to have shot down at least 5 Indian warplanes, along with taking several of the country's soldiers prisoner in retaliation for the missile strike. Bloomberg reports that Pakistan is using similar language to India by claiming that the downing of 5 planes are not hostile acts, but rather examples of Pakistan defending its own territory after those planes encroached. Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, was also quick to condemn India's attacks while promising retaliation. Pakistan has every right to respond forcefully to this act of war imposed by India, and a forceful response is being given, Sharif said in the wake of the missile strike. The Pakistani nation and the Pakistani armed forces know how to deal with the enemy. We will never allow the enemy to succeed in their nefarious goals. There can only be one conclusion from all of this. Tensions are seriously heating up between India and Pakistan, to the point where the nations may be teetering on the verge of going to war against one another. But how did we get here? That's a complicated question because the answer combines a recent catalyst with historical tensions that have existed for decades. On the catalyst front, India's massive missile strike is a direct response to an incident that took place on April 22nd. On that day, terrorists stormed India-controlled Kashmir, leading to gunmen killing 26 tourists in the region and injuring several dozen others. This is the terrorist attack that India claimed it expected Pakistan to respond to in its X statement. India wasn't shy about throwing blame around in the wake of the attacks. NPR says the country directly accused Pakistan of involvement in the Kashmir attack, which the outlet says is the worst one to target Indian civilians in over a decade. The attack was serious enough to prompt an early US response, with Rubio calling on the leaders of India and Pakistan to cool their tensions to maintain peace and security in South Asia. This hasn't happened. Instead, tensions erupted and both India and Pakistan are now directly attacking one another. The brunt of the issue is being felt in Kashmir, where residents are now dealing with both sides shelling one another across the previously mentioned line of control. CNN's live tracker covering the situation includes several reports of what's happening right now, including one from a 30-year-old civilian who says, "We have been tense and anxious and glued to the television channels. This is the first time I've heard shelling this intense over my village." That's worrying. Small acts of aggression between India and Pakistan are nothing new across the line of control. However, if this civilian is accurate, what we're seeing now is more intense than any conflict that has occurred between the two nations within Kashmir for around 3 decades. Other Kashmir residents claim that explosions started happening at around 2:30 a.m. and continued for several hours. Another resident said, "We spent sleepless nights because of the heavy shelling. There were cries of women, children, and it was a desperate situation." Simply put, fear reigns in Kashmir right now. The region's citizens know that Kashmir will be the epicenter if a full-blown war erupts between India and Pakistan. That brings us to the historical tensions that contributed to what we're seeing today. The April 22nd terrorist attack in Kashmir wasn't an isolated incident. India and Pakistan have contested one another over ownership of the territory for decades, with the crux of their disagreement arising out of the wake of World War II and the creation of the 1947 partition of British India. The partition, which was one of the first steps the UK took to extract itself from India after several decades of ruling the country, established a Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan, according to the Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR. That alone may not have been a problem. Each of these countries gained sovereignty and defined borders. The issue arose from the fact that the UK essentially washed its hands of any responsibility over the fates of Jammu and Kashmir. Rather than assigning these territories to one country or the other, each was given a chance to choose which they would accede to. Therein lay the problem. The Jammu and Kashmir situation created competition between India and Pakistan, ultimately leading to the situation we see now, where there are Pakistani and Indian-controlled regions in Kashmir. Clashes and tensions are relatively common. Tensions on the borders established by the 1947 partition of British India were partially behind India and Pakistan entering full-blown war in 1965. The two countries engaged in another brief war 6 years later, this time over East Pakistan. India won that conflict, leading to the separation of East Pakistan from mainland Pakistan and the creation of the country of Bangladesh. In 1972, India and Pakistan made an attempt at mending fences. They jointly created the Simla Agreement, which established the line of control that's currently being subjected to shelling, along with the official splitting of Kashmir into 2 administrative regions. However, the simmering down of tensions didn't last long. By 1974, India revealed that it was testing nuclear weapons. Pakistan took that announcement as a direct challenge, sparking a nuclear arms race that has led to the two nations joining the world's select group of nuclear power. By the late 1980s, tensions had risen again, not aided by Pakistan providing support to several resistance movements operating in the Indian-controlled portion of Kashmir. Violence became more common. Crossing the line of control sparked conflicts, and though India and Pakistan have ostensibly maintained an official ceasefire since 2003, there are regular skirmishes across the line of control along with attacks on both sides of Kashmir. What we saw on April 22nd was just one example, albeit one of the most devastating instances of these types of attacks. This time, India decided that it needed to respond with heavy missile strikes. April 22nd was the catalyst for the eruption of tensions that have existed between India and Pakistan for decades. The attacks on civilians and tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir was a step too far for the Indian government, though it hasn't gone so far as to declare all-out war against Pakistan yet. The same is true of Pakistan. Though it's already responded by downing Indian aircraft and promising retaliation for India's airstrikes, it's also stopped short of declaring war. The two nations know how damaging such a conflict would be, not just for them, but for the entirety of South Asia. Still, we have to ask the question, what happens next? Right now, the conflict is on a knife edge. Pakistan's Information Minister Atullah Tarar claims that India resorted to aggression against Pakistan with no real evidence that it had anything to do with the April 22 terrorist attacks in Kashmir. Tarar claims that India has taken the unfortunate step of attacking civilians, even if that step was unintentional. So I think Pakistan, as a responsible nation, defending its honor, defending its territorial integrity, has responded back, Tarar tells Al Jazeera. That response includes the downing of 5 Indian aircraft mentioned earlier, along with Pakistan destroying 1 drone and several of India's quadcopters. Still, Tarar says that the ball now lies in India's court. We will not strike first, Tarar tells Al Jazeera. But if India resorts to aggression, Pakistan will respond, and Pakistan has responded. The message is clear. As long as India doesn't follow up its May missile strikes with more of the same, there's a chance that tensions will simmer down and the two countries can resolve their dispute diplomatically. Of course, that approach isn't being helped by instances such as Pakistan claiming that Indian troops on the line of control have raised the white flag in the conflict ongoing in that region. Tarar posted to X claiming, "First they fled from the investigation, now they fled from the field." Such thinly veiled accusations of cowardice on India's part might prompt a response, as could scenes from Hyderabad in Pakistan, where demonstrators have been photographed burning the Indian flag. Ideally, May's Indian airstrikes and Pakistan's response will mark the end of direct conflict, with the two nations opening discussions in the aftermath. But what if that doesn't happen? What if we're seeing the beginning of an all-out war between India and Pakistan? If that's the case, then the entire global community needs to be on notice because these two nations maintain some of the most powerful militaries in the world. According to Global Firepower, which ranks 145 of the world's nations based on the power of their militaries every year, India has the world's 4th largest military, with Pakistan having the 12th strongest. That alone tells us that a large-scale conflict between the two wouldn't be a small war. It would involve 2 heavy hitters throwing around an enormous amount of military might. India seems to have the advantage in most areas, should such a conflict ensue. On the manpower front, India has a much larger military, no matter which way you swing it. The country's 1.455 million active personnel dwarf the 654,000 who are part of Pakistan's military. On the reserves front, India maintains around twice the 550,000 reserves Pakistan has. Pakistan can't even rely on paramilitary forces, which are typically militant groups independent of, though aligned with, the goals of the country's official military. To even the manpower odds, Pakistan has 290,000 paramilitary forces, India has more than 1.6 million. India also spends around 10 times the amount Pakistan spends on its military annually, and that's seen in the disparity that exists between the two on the equipment front. India has around 1,000 more aircraft, including nearly 200 more fighter jets than Pakistan, over 4 times the aerial transports, and a much larger stock of helicopters. On land, India brings 4,201 tanks to a ground battle compared to Pakistan's 2,627. It also has over 120,000 more armored vehicles, though Pakistan has a slight advantage when it comes to self-propelled artillery and mobile rocket projectors. India can afford to allow that advantage given that its aerial power is substantially above Pakistan's. We also see a similar story on the naval front. India's navy has around 140 assets compared to Pakistan's 109, with the potential difference makers being India's pair of aircraft carriers. Pakistan has none, meaning India has the option of parking its carriers near the Persian Gulf to use them as a launching pad for aerial bombardments into Pakistan's west, while more attacks come across the border the two countries share to Pakistan's southeast. In a conventional war, the numbers suggest that India should come out on top. However, a fight between India and Pakistan will be far from conventional. Why? Because of the issue we mentioned earlier. Both are nuclear-armed countries. While it's very unlikely either country would resort to using nuclear weapons for the same reasons we don't see them used elsewhere, namely mutually assured destruction, they can't be discounted from the potential battle between India and Pakistan. The two nations are essentially neck and neck on the nuclear front, according to Bloomberg. Each has around 170 nuclear warheads, meaning any difference between the two might come down to delivery systems. Both are working on developing infrastructure that allows them to launch nukes from land, sea, or air, though neither is fully ready in all 3 departments. India certainly has the advantage when it comes to range. Its nuclear-capable Agni-V missile can travel up to 3,100 miles, meaning India could use it to target any region in Pakistan. The closest missile Pakistan brings to the table is the Shaheen-3, which is believed to be capable of traveling 1,708 miles. That's still more than enough to hit most Indian targets, though Pakistan is held back by the fact that this missile is still in testing. So despite each country having a similar number of nukes, there is a similar disparity to what we see on the conventional front. India comes out on top. That alone is a concern for Pakistan as it casts itself in the role of a nation defending itself from a more powerful threat. But therein lies another problem. A war between India and Pakistan wouldn't be limited to those two nations. As the Atlantic Council points out, any fighting between the two always has the potential to spill over into other regions of South Asia. Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and several other nations would have to navigate a difficult political climate. That's especially the case in Bangladesh, where anti-Indian sentiment is running high amidst the recent removal of a pro-Indian government. Would Pakistan call on Bangladesh to aid it in a fight against India? How would Bangladesh respond to the prospect of fighting against a far more powerful country? These are the questions to which we don't have the answers. What is likely is that a war between India and Pakistan would cause plenty of political jostling elsewhere and, in some cases, such as Bhutan's, could lead to rising Chinese influence in the Asian continent. But perhaps all of this talk of war is premature. Both India and Pakistan have tried to mix in mentions of not wanting to escalate the conflict further, even as the latter in particular reinforces its right to respond. Plus, as the Atlantic Council notes, there's also a potential off-ramp in this conflict that could lead to tensions lowering: a water deal. Claims that the terrorist attack on April 22nd and India's airstrike response aren't surprises. If anything, they follow a predictable pattern of escalation that the world has seen before, meaning it's likely that de-escalation will soon follow. It points to similar Indian strikes in 2016 and 19, both of which were responses to similar incidents as the most recent attack in Kashmir, showing us that India's approach is typically to respond with a show of force before bringing tensions back down. Srujan Palkar, who is the Atlantic Council's Global India Fellow, says that water may be the key. A key method of dialogue could be the renegotiation of the Indus Water Treaty, which was signed in 1960 and does not take into account modern climate and technological changes, he writes. Such a renegotiation could allow the US to exert its influence and contribute to the calming of tensions in South Asia. If a dialogue is opened about that treaty, which has no end date and is antiquated in today's climate, it could pave the way for territorial discussions in the future. But for now, we can't say for certain what will happen. All we know for sure is that India launched precise missile strikes in response to a terrorist attack in Kashmir, and that Pakistan has responded by taking out several Indian aircraft flying in its airspace. What do you think will happen next? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more commentary on the latest developments in the emerging crisis between India and Pakistan. Now go and check out why China and India are going to war, or click this other video instead.